Okay. Welcome everyone. Please excuse my camera. I don't know what's happening today, but before we start, let me just get the rules out there. Please keep all your mics muted and keep questions for the end of the talk. And questions should be brief and concise. All right. So my name is Maxine Morkel. I am the Vice President of the Student Chapter, SCG Student Chapter. And our speaker for today is Mr. Nelson Chelos. He's a geo-entrepreneur and a trained Namibian geoscientist, a project manager, US Climate Reality Trained Leader, and 2020 nominee for African Youth of the Year. Nelson is a founding member of a number of consulting firms in Namibia, including Excel Dynamic Solutions, and has over 7 years of consulting, mining, business development, and research experience. So without further ado, Mr. Nelson, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Maxine. Colleagues, can you hear me? It's this modern way of doing things. Good evening, colleagues. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Right. I'm going to put up 2 slides just for guidance. Then we can take it from there. Maxine, maybe before I start, I just want to have an idea of who I'm talking to. So are we all students, or do we have some members from the industry also? Am I just speaking to students?
We are students, lecturers, members from the industry.
Brilliant. Because the next question I was going to ask before I move, I have about 4 slides. So I understand you mentioned that I should, perhaps the colleagues should keep their questions for the time when I'm done presenting, but I'm actually comfortable with the format where, I'm also posing some questions, and then we can have some maybe interactions along the way. So the next question I was going to ask is really to say, so if that was now, if everyone here was a student, to say how many of you are perhaps looking for opportunities, either as internships or, maybe graduates, but maybe that will take, a whole lot of time to get answers to. And then the other question I had was, because there is only one slide that is important for this whole discussion, is really to get a picture of what your views are on the market. So, and I'm mostly speaking from the African perspective. So I don't really look at Namibia, South Africa as such, but continentally, what are the challenges that are facing the graduates, the geoscientists at this point? If we can have maybe 2 minutes just to address that at the end of my presentation. And obviously, with that last question, I want to maybe then paint a picture of why I think this whole notion of oversaturated market, not being able to create enough opportunities is really just because we are looking at the traditional way of doing things. But let's move on with the presentation. So like I said, I have about 4 slides. Maxine has introduced me. I don't think I need to do that. The only piece she missed is that I have a very strong passion for the development of Africa. I call Africa my girlfriend, and I stand to keep that for as long as the status quo remains. And I believe it's the young ones, it's us, and obviously with the support of the seniors to change the situation on the continent. We shouldn't be crying for opportunities. We shouldn't have geoscientists. I mean, these are highly trained, technical, specialized people seeking for opportunities sometimes in areas that make no sense. So we should really be ahead in our whatever we endeavors to make sure that they have something to be working on. So the first slide is really just the topic of it, but I want us to take a small trip as geoscientists and perhaps go do some. I was thinking of something crazy, but let's go do some oceanic exploration in the middle of Atlantic Ocean. So there are two ways. If you look at the world versus Africa, and forgive me if I'm referring too much to Africa when I'm speaking to UNAM staff and students. Obviously, I should be focusing perhaps more on the Namibian context, but it's just to paint a bigger picture so that after this, hopefully you start seeing things in a different perspective. So I want us to take a short trip. There are two modes. Looking at where Africa is versus where the world is. So the first is this one here, where I mean, our brothers can take a canoe. These are our, your Dr. Vatuvas and others taking students to a trip to explore the Atlantic Ocean. I don't know if you guys have picked it up, but I learned, there is really much yet to be discovered in the ocean. So could be that our future is in there. So we need to start taking canoes and go check out what is happening there. So that is one way. The other way is by doing it, in the more efficient way, which is what the world, where people have, if you look at it from a fear point of view or from a negative point of view, would say, no, this is where the guys who have taken everything out of Africa, this is what they are now using because they have the means. But I tend to look at it from rather a point of where you have people who are thinking of what better tools can we get to do similar work for similar results, but perhaps just done more faster at a cheaper price, sometimes not, and it's not riskier. So you are not likely to lose lives, and therefore you can cover a wider area than what we had in the first case. So this is two scenarios that I'm looking at. It's all exploration, whatever you call it. So in fact, this picture that I have here, the second one, is from some of our colleagues who were doing some oil spill work in the West. Okay, but so the question comes then that, I mean, we are targeting the same results, right? But the approach is not the same. Not only the approach, perhaps the activities are also not the same. And I'm going to speak, perhaps painting what I'm saying based on these two stories. Because as Africa, obviously, we are starting from scratch. The rest of the world is somewhere. And I mean, I don't care if there are other areas there that are also where we are. That's fine. But I'm just trying to generalize it to say, even for our geoscientists, where they are starting when they leave university is not the same as where some geoscientists somewhere, across the world are starting. There is quite a difference in access to weather opportunities, information, training, equipment, you name it. So the model I'm going to speak about is then looking at how do we transform our graduates and students and staff and everyone else into economic machines, into people who are driven by, creativity, creativity, being innovative, as opposed to blaming the system, as opposed to blaming the status quo, as opposed to having hopeless, and sleepless nights, but they seem not to know what needs to be done next, right? So please feel free to ask if, like I said, I'm more of a, I like being a discussant than, trying to give a class. It's really not my game. But, this model is to look at, turning yourself into a valuable asset. And I mean, an asset can have, of course, many meanings. But here I'm saying, how do you have a geoscientist who, when walking in the street, people are not scared and they are not saying, wow, it's that guy, because of qualifications or what have you, but because of what you are using your mind to do for society, for the world, basically, and for yourself. So how do you turn yourself from a guy who is collecting email addresses to request for internships, to request for job opportunities, to request for whatever you name it? I mean, we all know, we have all gone through it, to someone who is selecting, who is filtering out who to engage. I mean, even at a student level, I remember we did this when we were trying to get some interns at MADI, Minerals Africa Development Institution. There were some students who were really brilliant that we were chasing them. They were not chasing us, we were chasing them. And, sometimes they are busy and, they give you excuses, not excuses, they give you reasons why they can't attend to something. And you have to understand that's a valuable asset, right? Okay, now let's get into the model, because I forgot to ask Maxine. I don't know how much time I have, and I like talking sometimes because these are really exciting things for me. But let's get to the real business. So I don't know how many of you can see. Can you see my screen? Let's hope you can see.
Yes,
Can you see my screen? Okay, brilliant. So what we have here is your typical KFC. Please allow me to use practical examples from various sectors. It won't really be just about geoscience, because how I look at life and the planet and whatever is going on, I look at it in one with one eye in one box. It's the same things. The only differences normally come with principles, how certain things are conducted. But if it's research, whether you are studying about how kids behave at school, whether it's rocks, whether it's medicine, it's research, it's data collection, it's processing it, it's turning it into some valuable document called the report, is packaging it in a presentation that everyone can understand, and then you get paid if that is for payment. It's the same process. So allow me to use some examples that perhaps you will be able to associate yourself with easily. So for instance, let's take KFC. I know we have good cooks here, but KFC is perhaps a good example to summarize this. So they have chicken, right, which you can cook at home. And the other day I had a discussion with a friend to say, but why are you going to buy KFC? Why are you going to buy a chicken when you have a freeze full of bags of chicken and whatever? And he said, it's not the same. It's not the same. So what that guy had is an idea of, what do I want? And he had a certain feeling that he needed to fulfill. And for him to get that feeling fulfilled, he needed to pay someone. And then obviously that someone uses that money to buy more chicken pieces, and then he repeats the process. Now back to geoscience. And let me speak to graduates and students. If you are going to prepare a CV for some attachment or employment or whatever, how I see that is an idea, right? You are not sleeping, you have an idea of walking out of your room and to go hand deliver or send an email somewhere seated on a chair to ask someone to give you an opportunity. So that is an idea, right? Now, what happens is, I think what students, including myself, miss is that people are not interested in the fact that you did petrology, hydrogeology, calculus, whatever. No, because, as a business, and I'm going to perhaps speak from now the economic point of view. As a business, we do not make money from looking at these individual skills, and whatever have you. So we look at what are we pushing out, a finalized product, and that could be a report where you have incorporated things from ecology, things from mineralogy, and so on and so on. That's what we look at, and then we say, so what value can we give to this item that we are pushing out? And in that value, then you are a piece of a puzzle. So what that means is that before we push out this product that someone out there is willing to pay for, what would be the contribution of this student? It's not the fact that you are at school and you need an opportunity. That comes in when you are looking at, the social setup, and normally it's easier to do with government because, that's their responsibility. They need to make sure that everyone is happy. But the industries which you guys are targeting, you are, forgive me for the, to use the word, but you are a piece of a puzzle of a much bigger something, right? Now, when you are submitting that CV, you have an idea, and now you are submitting that CV. What we do is we come to what we call a pod. So, for instance, Excel Dynamic Solution offices and our partners and, our computers and the systems, together they form what we call a pod, right? Is really what is happening behind KFC. You perhaps walk in and it's just the counters where you do the payment, but those pieces are coming from somewhere where, people are carrying out certain activities. This is exactly how you do it, even in geoscience. And mining as well. I've been part of a mining operation. What is happening is a setup like Excel Dynamic Solutions, for instance, is a pod. Now, when we receive a CV from a graduate or from a student saying, hi, Mr. Nelson, I need an opportunity just to know how things happen and so on and so on. The first question I'll ask, if we sit together now with the colleagues, is to say, guys, at the moment, as a whole entity, do we have a piece that is missing for us to complete the whole puzzle. If that piece is not there, then most of the time it's unfortunate, because our focus is at the end product, which someone is willing to pay for. And I'll explain why that is important. So this pot then means when you come here, we are clear, it's just a student, but we still want her to contribute to baseline data collection, for instance. We still want her to assist us with field work, right? So in here, this is where everything, the packaging, everything is happening. So you start, for instance, let's say we get a project. I'll give you a practical example of a project we are working on. So at the moment we are doing the strategic environmental assessment for the city for the next 10 years. So once that was just an idea for the city, right? To say, hey guys, I mean, we want to turn this city into a smart city, but have we considered environmental issues? Have we considered social issues? Have we considered town planning issues? Have we considered the space we have, the geology, the sensitivity of groundwater? Now, those are just ideas. Now we need to sit back at EDS office and come back to the port and say, so if we are going to prepare this meal, and that meal is the strategic environmental assessment report that guides the city, what needs to happen, right? So we come here and then we say, okay, what data to be collected? What processing software do we need? Who do we need to process that? Who do we need to give us some wisdom and knowledge? These are now where you get your professors, because they've been in the industry for long. And how do we package it in such a way that this customer here can easily use it, can easily see the transformation it will bring to their operation, and therefore they will be willing to pay for it. And when they pay, then we can afford to pay the indent. Because I mean, I know sometimes indents come with this nice, it's a strategy, I call it a strategy. I just want to work for free. But I kid you not, from my experience of working with quite a lot of them now, that is comfortable for the first week. In the next couple of weeks, when you meet in the corridors in the office, and obviously the people who are part of the whole packaging are paid, and they are coming in with KFC and whatnot, the whole thing changes. So you can't really also promise someone that just come in and learn, and then there is nothing to be given to you. Because also what we understand is that the common language that everyone all over the world understands is money. So you need to give someone, you need to reward someone for their work. So we don't believe in the principle of I'm just coming to, because that doesn't help us to create the value we want. Okay, but back to the pot. So once now that report is done, let's say we were doing some exploration work. So we were in the field, we supervised drilling, and maybe some sampling. We got the results from the lab. Now we must generate, we did the modeling and so on. Now we must generate that final product. That report that the owner can then take to shareholders, and they pump in more money. That comes here at the main dish, dish 1, dish 2, dish 3, and so on and so on. What that means is that your main report could then be the overall report that covers sampling, logging, and so on and so on. But you could also give that in pieces, to say, okay, now I'm giving you just on sampling, I charge you this much. Now I'm giving you on just field work and expenses, I charge you that. So I don't really want you to focus on that, but it's the principle that I want you to understand. So even how we split the main dish, the main report into these various activities has something to do with the indent we are getting on board. So it's not by just the mere fact that there are people out there in the street that need help, but it's what piece is the person bringing to that pot, so that we have what we promise to the client. And we very much rely on the principle of cause and effect, that every cause has an effect. So if you get this student or a graduate on board, there will be an effect that as a company you may feel in a good way or in a bad way, right? So, and normally that is clear in the financial terms. It's never clear in the activities, because I mean, if you have a team of over say 15 people, it's busy, so you can't really pinpoint and say this is coming from the Indians work. But financially, you will see that, you know, that decision that we made in March to bring in on this graduate, yes, she needs help, has this ripple effect. But yeah, let's start also now from the main dish. The trickier part here now, and I will explain why this speaks really to the context of turning graduates into machines, as I'm referring to it there, is that, so whatever we promised to our client, this is where it becomes relevant. You know, all along here, where you look at what activities are being taken, you know, someone is perhaps entering data, those are not relevant. Those things are not important at all. So, but once we produce now the report, then we can then give it to whoever is the end user, then we cache it. But there's another switch there. So the red circles there, we call them switches. So there's another circle there. So what that means is, as a business, and perhaps as a graduate, I'll use also the notion of a graduate. You only get paid if you satisfy the conditions that we have set up. So the conditions, we call them switches. So what that means is, for instance, if we have an agreement that says you must deliver so much by when to get so much, and that doesn't happen, then I just switch off here. So that tap is not gonna give you water. And it's the same here. When you come at idea to the port, you know, obviously before you have an idea of getting employed, before you get to our port, we may have a small discussion. Some guys are doing interviews and so on. It's a switch, it's a filter. It's just to basically say, you don't just allow in anyone to come in, you must have some sort of filters. But what is interesting is also that here, graduates also have switches, because I mean, some guys are registered with labor laws or labor unions and whatnot. So if you don't pay them, then they, you know, they put up their placards and, you know, it becomes chaos. So they also have a switch on the company. But I want, as a student, I want you to look at it to say, how do I ensure that if I get on board EDS tomorrow, how do I make sure that I'm paid what I deserve? So you need then to look at, as a graduate who is now ready to get into the market, you need now to look at what would be my switches, so that I'm not, you know, people appreciate my value, my contribution to the whole package. Remember the dish that I spoke about there. So obviously now when that happens, then you have money in the bank. And what happens is really just that you repeat. This is now where you get the employment model. Is really employment of business. Is really to say, once the money is in the account, I mean, you may consume it somewhere there, but then obviously then you repeat the process, and in that repetition you also then learn and you improve on what needs to be improved. Now let me bring this back to graduates, right? So you want to be employed. So I think, and this is really what I believe in, I think it's wrong. It's a process that I went through myself. I don't blame it on anyone. But after doing some reviews, I think it's wrong to approach industries and say, I did geology and I need opportunities. I think it's completely wrong. What I would suggest is that you do, because you are a researcher. I kid you not, at fourth year, you are not just someone in the street. You are a researcher. I mean, you know it all. You should be able to take a company like EDS and study them in and out, and actually walk in there and say, you know, that did you realize that there is this piece of of the puzzle that I can feel. Then I mean, as people who are always in will be like, oh wow, that sounds like we haven't seen it, we haven't realized. Please start tomorrow, because the reason why we will make such a quick decision is because we will see how it affects the bank account. And for us, I mean, any industry, you may hear all these nice stories and whatever they are saying or whatever they are telling you. There is no business that is started, unless if it's an NGO, started on the principle of giving people opportunities just because they deserve those opportunities. It's always about how much will eventually end up in the bank account, and how then do we distribute that amongst ourselves, and obviously for expansion. So graduates, so basically what I'm saying is, at that idea of approaching companies, you must already forget about crystallography and blah blah and hydrogeology and so on, and say, what do these guys do? What have I learned? Right? I mean, you should really not feel ashamed of what you have learned. 4 years with all these calculations and observations in the field, mapping and whatnot, you have a big chunk that you can contribute to any company, I think, anywhere in this world. So you then need to study these guys and say, so what can I offer to these guys? Then put it in, like a paragraph. Because the other thing I saw graduates doing, and you suffer as, I'll be honest with you, there are times when I'm in that HR thing, and just to spend 10 minutes looking at someone's CV, that's not going to happen. I don't care whether you start with the best university in the world's name. 10 minutes of my time looking at one guy's papers is a whole waste of my time. So what you do is you package what you can offer, and the moment we can relate, the moment it speaks to our value, you are likely to be in. So, but I think what you really need also to pay attention to is to find out what our pot is all about. What are we cooking, right? Because if you are going to if you are going to shop, right, and you are going to decide when you are in the shelves whether you need onions and tomatoes and whatnot, but you are forgetting the end consumers who are at home, who may not be, is perhaps people who don't eat onions and stuff, then the whole system, you have already messed it up. So it's important to make sure that when you are going to shop, right, you know exactly what the end consumer who is supposed to pay you wants, so that you also save resources such as time that you are there. The time that you are spending preparing your CV, someone should be paying for that. In fact, as a matter of fact, before we started this, I wanted to ask that I think already at varsity level, you should know what you are worth an hour, right? So that the first day you walk in someone's office and you are looking for an internship, you are saying, I want to do activity A, B, C, and D, and this is what I'm offering. If it's something that we can accommodate, why should we spend a lot of time scanning through 100 CVs? If that can fit in the puzzle already from the financial point of view. So you need to understand the pot, what really is happening there. And these things are easy to pick up. So, I mean, you can look at the vision of the company, mission, they may list the services they are offering. Then the best also is to befriend anyone from there who could be, a receptionist. Just say, look, you know what? I have a dream, it may not be a long-term dream, but I have a dream to start off my career with you guys. Can you have a session,
Mr.
30
Nelson,
minutes? Yes.
You have 15 minutes.
Okay, let me wrap up. Can you have a, I warned you about this. So I told you I'm very passionate. So can you have a session with me just to understand what do you guys really do? And what, keeps you awake at night, because if you can come in and try to address things that are keeping business owners and managers awake at night, that gives you also additional points, right? Okay, but it's really the pot. And then just understand what the guys are putting across to the world, what are they delivering to clients. Make sure that you understand that, and then have something to add to that of value. So with that, then obviously put across your, like I said, your terms and conditions, that these are my conditions. Should this happen, I just want this out of the whole deal. Then you repeat that. So I think in conclusion, really, maybe let me talk about how we managed to work with various partners and not only in Namibia. I mean, at the moment we are doing some work in Angola. We have partners from 4 countries in Africa, and one gentleman in the US, another company in Greece. It's really that we did not go to them and say, we are geologists, we can do it all. We said, guys, we are asked to do this. This is a piece we can handle, a piece of a whole puzzle. Because one of the biggest problem we have on this continent is that of wanting to do everything and to take everything home. But I think as graduates, you can actually, even in your own associations and groups like this, you can actually start working together to say, how do you put together your CV? And, I mean, okay, is there something I can help with? Just, working in groups, it helps quite a lot. The profile you build, you may not earn as much as you want to earn, because obviously it's a group, but the profile, when we worked on a project, everyone says, I worked on this project, but the money may not be necessarily that good. So for building a profile, I would say, start from there, where you are working together with, the fellows that you are already with, even at school, because that is really how we manage to create all these partners that we have. At the moment, we get requests, even from outside, where partners or just some random people are saying, hey, we know you do this. Are you able to assist? One thing we do first, the first thing we do first is to come back to this model and say, okay, this is a brilliant idea. How does our port look? If there is a piece missing there, then we bring in someone, for instance, like from the US. Then we say, okay, so what are we really offering to the client, and how do we capture our value? Then we repeat it. So you find that now you are doing the same thing for 5 clients, and then that obviously starts to boost your bank account. Colleagues, I can speak about this for the for the rest of the evening, but I think in conclusion, really, because I want to give you 5 or so minutes to ask, is really to say, it's possible if you change your mindset. It's really possible to get attached tomorrow, as in tomorrow, if you change your mindset. I can't tell you, I know there are people who say, when I say this, they say, no, there's a bit of ego and whatnot, but I believe if I want a job tomorrow, I'll get it. I mean, with no doubt. But that's because whoever I want to give me job, I'll make sure I tell them what they need to hear. So, and it's the same with projects. At the moment, we are working on a whole lot of projects. Some at this point, I'm actually not involved anymore. That's you have to start from there. But lastly, I think also consider starting from things that have nothing to do with geoscience. Myself, I was in the desert chasing geckos and lizards, at Govabeb there. But it gave me an opportunity to understand the research. I mean, we could receive researchers from all over the world. And then I picked up that there's actually a gap, to the whole thing of data science. So when we started Excel, for instance, we were basically a data collection company, and capturing and whatnot. But it was to say, so that when we eventually enter geoscience, we can say, look, we worked with Mr. X. It's easier that way, regardless of which sector you are coming from. And at the moment, I mean, I'm involved in other things that have nothing to do with geoscience, just because I'm looking at it from a higher level point of view, not from the port, not from activities that it's hydrogeology, whatnot, but high level. Thank you very much. If there are questions, I'm happy to attend to those. Otherwise, please, if two or so can answer my question, what your plans are for the industry, maybe in 2 years or so. Is there any one of you guys who wants to start a business, or you are all looking at, what frustrates me lastly also is the fact that all geoscientists here are just looking at mining and minerals. But in the US, for instance, over 40% of geoscientists are in industries such as construction, hazards identification and things like that. Things that have to do with livelihoods of so many people. You don't have to target a mine. I mean, you could be the one telling us whether the city is safe in terms of fractures and stuff like that. So yeah, that's where I'm stopping, and it would be really nice to hear 2 or 3 plans of the colleagues here. Thank you, colleagues.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson, for the talk. I think this will be very helpful for graduates now and in the future. For those of you who have questions, you can just put up your hand and then ask your question, or you can type it in the chat box if you like.
Questions, comments? So it means you are all ready for the industry. That's good.
Hello. How do I raise my hand? I don't know. Sorry. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Oh, this was meant for Maxine. Can I, since there's no one asking a question, can I ask the question? Am I allowed to?
Yes, PJ, go ahead.
Oh yeah, Nelson, thanks for the nice talk. Sorry, I got in a bit late. I wanted to know, I don't know, in the past years, have you received any graduates from UNAM, and how are they at work, like their energy and so forth? What can you say about UNAM graduates?
Yeah, it depends. So we offer various services, not only to geoscientists. So yeah, even some of our permanent colleagues are from UNAM. But look, like I said, I think when I was touching on the issue of I'm willing to work for free and stuff, the energy is always good. At the beginning of the engagement. But I think along the way, one thing, if there is really one thing that keeps bothering me, is the fact that our graduates are not clear on what they want. And therefore, even with this model, even if you say, okay, now I see you are coming here to fit this piece of the whole thing, the dedication is limited because they come here and then they settle, then they use your office space to start looking for other things again. So it's not that it's something you come across that you walk in the other office and they are busy looking for opportunities. It's just that they are not dedicated to the cause. So it's not like, you know, when we started, there is nothing. And I mean, up to this point, perhaps I'm one of the members who are running the business at no salary whatsoever. And that you don't get in graduates, because there is a perception of looking at how is the society set up. You know, I mean, all graduates, some get good jobs, they start driving nice cars and things like that. I didn't want to obviously go there. Then when that person joins, they are looking outside. They are not looking inward and figuring out what needs to be done. So they start looking outside, and then that damages the whole engagement. I mean, they are positive. They know the technical stuff. They know what needs to be done, but in my opinion, they lack the business side of things. I mean, you can ask them to write a report. That's fine, but how do you write it in a way that the next person can pay for it? It's not really there. And then when you try to help, obviously then they may tell you, no, but I'm just here to write reports. But this is not, you know, academic reports. This is a product that someone must buy so that we sustain the system. So yeah, overall, it's okay. I mean, it's okay, but there is really much to be done. Even from academia, I would say for the staff, if they can start asking questions such as, you know, at the end of every module, so how do you see this being applied? You know, the application element, not just the fact that now you can calculate X plus Y equal to what, but how are you going to apply it so that someone buys it? So brilliant question. I feel, honestly, I'll be honest with you, I feel there is still much to be done. But technical stuff, they are okay. I mean, if you take the person to the field, they may tell you this is quotes and what. But how do you turn that quotes into glasses and whatnot? That people are not going to buy stones just like that. I mean, if they do, then you don't get much value out of it. I hope that answers your question though, but yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Right.
Shawin, you may ask your question.
All right, thank you. I hope you all can hear me. Thank you, Mr. Nelson, for that presentation. Very insightful indeed. For me, it's just to answer the question that you raised at the end, asking if we are planning to start a business or anything like that. From my side, personally, I feel like starting a business is something that might come across at a later stage. For now, it's more into like getting into the industry or getting something to work with, you know, just to have a startup capital or be working on saving for the business later on. So not really more of a start, but more of a later stage thing.
Oh, brilliant. If I can comment on that one, what's your name? Sorry, okay, Shawin. If I can comment on that one, I think what I forgot to say also is that, you know, a business is not the same as the founder. A business is an independent entity, even by definition, by Company Act definition. So I think the fear we normally have as geoscientists is that of, and you see this a lot when now you are engaging the seniors, is that of, you know, you can't start if you have not been in the industry for so many years. But a business is a platform where you can invite people with experience to work, and, you know, you just make sure that they are paid. We work with professors and you name it. We work with big companies. Some For instance, the project we are doing for the city, we are working with companies that were established before I was born. They in the 70s, 80s. It's a platform. You just need to create that platform. Then whoever buys in the vision or in how you operate the system joins, and you each take something home. So don't be scared because you feel like, but I only worked for a mine for 1 year. I left that mine with, if I know me more, maybe 40%, even less actually. So, but I'm like, but I can get someone who has worked for a mine for 30 years to work for 8 years. Why not? We have the platform. We just have to convince the guy that this is how you fit in the pot. Then we generate this value and we get paid. Then everyone is happy. Yeah, I hope that helps you also to decide sooner. I don't want you to start in 2030. That's too far.
Point well taken and
Yeah.
noted, Thank you, Mr. Nelson.
Great.
Thanks, Gerald, and thanks, Shawin. Mine is a follow-up to both the Shawin's question and your answer. So the question that always lingers in my head is, how will one buy into your ideas as a fresh UNAM graduate running a company? How will someone buy into, offer you a contract, give you a project to run, when you as the head is just a fresh UNAM graduate? Pretty much they wouldn't ask you to, explain what you can offer, right? They look at your credentials and say, you are just fresh out of UNAM. How can we trust you with this? So
I hear you. Who is it Kasonda speaking? No. Or absent?
No, it's Job.
Here is the thing, as I said, you don't have to put your name, I think, on the list. And we do this quite a lot, depending on the magnitude of the project. You do not have to put your name first. You can be the technician on the list of the guys to carry out the work, fresh from the university. But you just have to make sure that whoever you put as a project lead is someone who knows what needs to be done, and put a small, nice story there that, I'll be the assistant manager. I can't tell you how many times I'll be the assistant manager, and you handle things like, communication. These are not technical things. Just making sure that the client is updated on what is going on is not going to require your geology modules whatsoever. It's really that. I'm speaking from experience that figure out, you have an idea, right? Figure out who is that experienced person in the same setup. Ask the guy, sit him down and ask him if you can collaborate. Allow him to take 90% of the income. Then say, you know what, I just want to sit with you because 10 years from now, I want to run this show. The problem we have on this continent, and I'm going to say, is that you are from UNAM and you want to take 90%. Or you are from UNAM and you want to be seen on social media and in CVs that you are the manager. You are from UNAM and at the same time, you really want to tell people what to do. I listen, when it comes to our port, I listen more than I in the street, I'm talking too much because it's a passion as well. But when I come back to the port, I have to listen to the technical people because they know how the show is run. Most of the businesses obviously are started by young people, but just forget the leading part. That's why at Excel, we don't, if you walk in and you speak of CEOs and blah, 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 we are likely, all of us are likely to chase you out. We just speak of a team, everyone is same level. But when it comes to projects where in case you are presenting to the city, just tell them that guys, this whole project is really for me to gain experience. I'm working with this renowned expert and I'm taking as little as possible. Sometimes you don't actually have to take anything other than the experience, which you could be paying at, you know, NBS. If it's business management administration, you will be paying 80,000. Why do you want to get it out of a project at this point? Give the guy an opportunity to teach you, then you take it over. Now we are applying for some work in Mauritius, for instance, on our own. But when we did similar work in Angola, we needed technical people who could do the work. I hope that helps.
Yeah, it does help so much. Thanks.
All right.
Okay, Dr. Vatuva had a question and then Angeline.
Thank you, Maxi. Thank you, Nelson, for the wonderful presentation, and especially which I find very informative, especially to our fourth year students. That in fourth year it's time to look back in your career of a student and see what you have learned and what you can do with what you have. That is really a very prominent thing to do, and we are really now looking at the graduate employability attributes and those things. And also just to comment that you especially on how lecturers should then be asking students more to say the course learning outcome. What are you learning from this course? That's very important. We are now reviewing our curriculum and also to inform you that entrepreneurship is becoming a compulsory course for all the students. I think the university really want to see that you don't only graduate and become someone just looking for employment, but to create employment. So the you coming in today, I think it's very important that you also then, I think, make a statement or just emphasize on how, especially these guys that are graduating, how they are able to take up a business space. Maybe just some words of wisdom for them. And especially for us now as lecturers, how are we going to work together, especially with the industries, to make sure that we graduate students that we want to serve the industry. I think, like you said, there is a lot of potential, especially in the Namibian industry. It is small. All we want is to go to the mine and so forth currently, but there is that chunk of other interests that geosciences can take space in. I think just how as universities and industries can work together, because really, even if these are our students, in the end they are your employees, or they are the business people. Somewhere there, I think the two entities, the industries and universities, must work together. I mean, in other countries, you see that the support that is coming from the industries to the university is incredible. But here, man, you have to run. You have to look after these guys. To just come and offer help. I don't know if it is things coming from the colonial past, and in the sense that most of the industry is owned, especially the geological industry, is owned by the foreign multinational corporations. But how I just don't know how to let's say, change the mindset of everyone and just see this student as, not only a responsibility of a lecturer, but also a responsibility of industries. So because in the end, really, although we are teaching them, they are to serve your organizations, and you really want to receive someone who is ready and so forth. Just maybe how to have that process to synchronize our processes from the
Correct.
intake to the outtake.
Doctor, you know what? One thing I said to a friend who is a lecturer at one point, and for me, it's the easiest way to create these machines. I call them machines. Forgive me. People can be machines. A machine is, once it's switched on, it does wonders. And obviously, that's the element that is missing in people. But I said one thing once to a lecturer who is not in the geoscience space, to say, if you can start looking at those final year research projects that students do, if you can already cover all the components of number one, business management planning. So what's the scope, what's the schedule, what is the cost, even put zero there, even if there is no money. So who are your stakeholders? Some farmers to the farm that you have to collect the data. How are you going to integrate all this? If you can already start there, because that is the last, as a university, that is the last opportunity you have to turn someone into a machine. It's really to say, now this project is done. It's not just about go present at the final, whatever, so you get your marks, but it's to say, so how does now this product, go sell it to the market now? How does it help you to become the first employed geoscientist? Because you work for the whole year, for God's sake. But it's just a document that is produced, do a final presentation, send you out into the world. That's what the Bible says, and it's done. But I mean, you can turn this into a product that not maybe sellable, but it has covered all the elements that are required from an economic point of view. And I mean, already there, you can engage the industry, because you can say, we have a student who is working on project X. So we are looking more on the academic side, how to reference and so on and so on. How do we add value? The economic element, are you able to come in? And I mean, from our side, we will be keen to work with, because what do projects do? They already expose you on things like, how do you engage stakeholders? How do you process data? How do you, give value to this document so that someone pays for it? And these documents, some companies may be actually be willing to pay for them, but because that research is done independently somewhere there in the south or wherever, no one is actually aware of it. You only see a line in the guy's CV, I worked on Naukluft, blah, blah, and you're like, oh, wow, we were actually looking for some work in Naukluft last week. I'm sure this is not an acceptable standard, perhaps per education or whatever, but for me, that is the most brilliant opportunity you could have to turn someone into a machine. Doctor, I really hope one day we could use that final research, whatever, to add an economic element. But yeah.
Okay, Angeline, if you still have a question, you can ask your question, and then after that, I think we can end the meeting.
Evening. No, the question that I had, it was more or less like jobs, so it was answered.
All right. Angeline, what is your plan for next year?
Well, right now I'm doing an internship under RES, Remote Exploration Resources. So my plans are to still work in their project.
So what value do you think you are giving to them at this point? Or do they just tell you what to do and you do that?
Yes, more or less, I feel like I'm doing so much because they tell me something, and mostly whenever my supervisor come back to me, she always says I do extra work than I'm asked. So I feel like I'm adding value to what they're actually doing.
That's brilliant. There is a gentleman, you must check him out. I know Josia will agree with me, called Jim Rohn. He says you must always do more than you get paid for. If you want to remain relevant in the industry, do more than what you get paid for.
Okay.
Yeah. Right. Thank you, colleagues. It's our responsibility to transform Africa. That's my last note. But thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Nelson. Thank you, everyone, for joining our talk. We will end it here for today.
Right. Brilliant.
Denzel, I think you can end the recording now.
Yes, Denzel, just